Hello, what's up everyone? I hope you're good. In this video, I wanted to talk to you about the inspiration I got from the Odyssey and its soundtrack by Ludwig Goransson. Um, as you might know, as you surely know, the Odyssey came out in theaters like a month ago or something like this. I went to see it like 2 weeks ago with friends. It was a wonderful experience in IMAX. I loved the movie in itself. I loved the soundtrack from Ludwig Göransson, obviously. And by listening back to the soundtrack multiple times, there are really key points, several key points that stuck with me and that inspired me and that pushed me to make that project and experiment with those concepts. So the different things that I picked up on from the soundtrack was the different parts, the radical different parts that are in some of the cues. Like in some cues, he's really not afraid to start with a theme and completely switch the mood of the track, completely switch the mood of the track in the middle, for example. And so really using different parts and well defined parts in the track was something that I wanted to experiment with, as well as obviously trying to come up with some kind of melody slash theme and play around with different instruments and different expressions to emphasize the emotion. I wanted to play around with the rhythm. You know, there's a track in particular that stuck with me in the soundtrack of the movie. It's called Troy, and it has something really interesting with rhythms, and feels like the track is like accelerating and decelerating, and there's a lot of things happening in there. Um, Open my mind to maybe try to play with the some BPM automations and stuff like that, even though that's not something that I did in the track. I tried to have something, um, let's say, to have something that rhythmically is kind of special, you know. We'll dive into that a bit later. And a thing that he uses a lot as well throughout the whole score is the use of shepherd tones, the use of pitch bend notes, you know, like long notes, sane notes, really being bent like in a long period of time, which makes for this tension rising, you know. And yeah, that's pretty much the things that I wanted to experiment with in that project. And I will try to show you a little bit what's inside and the different stuff that I experimented with. Let's go for it. So, I started with the instruments. And so what I did was just go for like a pretty basic drone. Basically gonna play like a single note all throughout the track, even though I have some automations on, like I played with the EQ in order to rise up like some of the higher frequencies and really try to have a bit of movement on that drone. The simple melody that is played throughout the first part of the track, because I did a bit of things with the whole overall structure, which I'll dive into as well. The synth is playing that. So it's very simple. I did on purpose like this kind of gap at the end of the note so that other instruments would be able to feel that space. As you can hear, all the synths are going into a bus where I had like the RC20 making this kind of uh, vinyl crackling sound, you know, just to give a bit of that texture to their overall instruments. For the drone, I used Legend, which is an amazing synth. And for these two, I use Legend as well. There might be different patches, there might be different presets, but you could go with any kind of sound that you want. That second track here is just like supporting the melody when it plays, being a bit lower. With a bit of panning to the left as well. Just in order to support the melody. In some parts it's playing different stuff as well, but we'll get into that. We also have a pad sound that is like, it's bounced to audio, but it was from the Legend as well. It's basically supporting the melody as well. This kind of vintage sound, synth sound feeling. And this one is responding with that other one down here, so it's pretty clear that these ones are responding to one another. With the melody itself. Then in that section I have another sound here, which this one is a lot more detuned and have this pedal effect here. It's coming later in the track because I really wanted to go from something that's pretty quiet and clean and go more and more towards dissonance and detuned sounds and creating that tension. So this one sounds like that. Later on in the track, I'm playing more with these long notes and those pitch bend automation that really go from all the way down to all the way up throughout the whole note to create that tension. You know, it's gonna hit every dissonance along the way, and it's really creating that feeling that we get in the second part of the track. I duplicated it right there to bring back again more layers, more tension. Here's playing the two notes, then he's playing again that kind of high note with the pitch bend automation. Obviously there's a lot of automation in volume or the volume faders there. Also have this like spreading automation at the end to make it wider and bigger. These long notes here, they kind of sound like that. Oh yeah, this one, it has those hits because I've played with the expression mod wheel here, which is controlling the filter. So it's doing that thing. I didn't even do it on purpose in the beginning, but I felt it sounded cool. So you really get that feeling of this sound that's rising and rising, playing through the fuzz distortion as well. And the last sound that we have is like more of a horn. There's shorter notes being played there, and all the bigger notes, they have pitch bend as well, as you can see. In order, the last ones, they're even playing octaves in order to be bigger. This one sounds like that. This one, I think it's the only sound that's not coming from the Legend, and this one is coming from Serum. So in the beginning, as you can see, I played two notes to kind of stay in that melodic realm, let's say. And later it's more playing those pitch bend notes again to sound a bit more like a sound effects. you know. So that's pretty much what's going on with the synth. As you can see, the overall structure of the track is 16 bars parts, but the track is also kind of divided in two, where I have this switch right there in the middle. So we could say it's also two big parts of three 16 bars parts as well, you know. So instead of having a structure that relies on 2 parts or 4 parts or 8 parts, uh, even though I'm using 16 bar loops, which is in that realm of 4/4, you know, I decided to do 3 parts instead, because that's pretty much what I'm using in the drums. So there's this, like, the 4 and the 3 going against each other, you know. I have also sound effects at the bottom. In the beginning, you can hear some kind of birds that I recorded the other morning. Then it's some kind of rain sound. Kind of bird, a bit stretched to give a bit of artifacts here and there. There's more like the rain. Even though it's pretty noisy, sounds more like a... You can kind of feel the rain, but it's also like noise. And, you know, I just wanted this opposition. As the first part, I'm trying to go for something more melodic and clean and quiet. I thought the morning birds would be nice to go along, and the rain, a bit, you know, a bit more moody, a bit more dark, maybe, let's say. And so that's there. I have also sound effects that come into play from the switch and in the second part to bring more glitchy sound, and as well to, you know, to be around the transitions of each different parts, because the drums only by themselves, they are kind of, they feel a bit weird, again, with the dotted groove that I'm gonna show you. That's what's the dotted drums in bars of in loops, sorry, of 1.5 bar or 3 bars or 6 bars, going against those 16 bar parts. And so having those sound effects kind of help you, help your brain understand what's happening. And so the sound effects, they sound like this. Yeah, so you basically get the point of that. And underneath I have some stuff, because at some point I felt like the track was not like thick enough, let's say. And so what I did was recording the whole instrument group that's playing in the track, and then throwing it into different reverbs or frozen reverb, and getting a more washy ambient sound from the sounds that are already in the track. Then I stretched some and made some automations here and there to really help with the tension that's being built, you know. So in the beginning it could be sounding like that, a bit quiet, then picking up on intensity as we go. There's some hard panning going on as well. And you can hear like the different instruments that are in the track, but it's more like a washy layer of ambient. Of course, automation to mark the switch in the middle, but then picking back up again and really helping to rise that tension in the later part of the track. So that was really key as well, to get the tension that I wanted, you know. Here there's also just like a little bit of noise. again. Oh, sorry about that. But yeah, all these two ambient groups at the end, the noise and the frozen reverb tracks, they're here to support the tension and really make the mix a bit thicker. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the instruments and the ambience that are there. And so, uh, yeah, one more thing for the what I started with was this melody pattern here, and for the first part or what happens in the switch, the only thing I'm doing is that I'm basically, you know, doubling the length of the notes and the loop so that the pattern really gets spread out and feels like quieter, it feels slower. And so that's really helping me creating different intensities in every 16 bars parts that I have right there, you know. And that's something that I did with the drums as well. So the drums are basically in dotted notes and instead of being in normal notes. And so that means that if we take this one, for example, or that one, when you have a grid that's showing the 16th note, as you can see, or let's go with the in 32 rather, you can see that the blocks that I'm using, they're using 3 little blocks on this grid right there, and it's creating this kind of, you know, broken beat, this kind of polyrhythm kind of thing, where the loops, the beats, the patterns that I did, they're not looping in 1 bar or 2 bar or 4 bars or 8 bars or 16 bars. The groove of the drums being in dotted notes kind of make it fall rather in like a bar and a half, 3 bars, 6 bars, 12 bars, etc., you know. So with all my synth and the overall structure of the track is in a regular 4/4 grid, you know. All the patterns, they are looping in each big part or section, you know. But for the drums, as you can see, the loops, they are always taking either 3 or 6 bars because the groove is in dotted notes. And so what happens is that every time we hit the 16 bar mark, there's like an interruption, you know, like the groove of the drum is disrupted to kind of force you into the next part, you know. And that's really what I tried to do to create that like unsettling feeling and this weird feeling in the track that you get into a groove of drums, but at each transition between the parts, you get forced into the next one, you know. It's not going really smoothly. That's why I'm playing with layering, adding sounds. And that's why I'm playing as well with the sound effects, as I told you, to kind of guide our brain to understand what's going on, even though there's this unsettling slash disturbing feeling. You know, if you listen to, uh, even if you look at it, you know, here we have the whole loop, here we have the whole loop, and here we don't have the whole loop. So it's going into the next part. It's reset by force, let's say. And that's what makes the feeling of the drum being a little bit weird, you know. And for the patterns themselves, I did the same thing as I did with the synth, which means that I doubled the length of the notes and the patterns to get a slower feeling. We focus on that sound, for example. In the part before, it's slower, you know. It's twice as slow. and then the pattern before that even more so, you know. So that's what's allowing me to crank up the intensity and the speed without really touching the BPM of the whole project, you know. I'm really trying to make everything get more intense with all the sounds, but also kind of go faster with the drums uh, playing. You know, every loop here is slower, and there's more space in each hit of the drums, and then it gets faster. It gets faster. I did it with every drums that I'm using. This one here, I kept on the grid, let's say, you know, to try to have that go against the whole groove of the drums that's in dotted. Again, this one is in regular 4, you know. It's this sound is the only sound in the drums that's coming when you expect it, you know. And so it gets this feeling of going against the whole rest of the drums, you know. And so if we were to focus only on the drums and hear the transitions, you can hear that it sounds kind of messed up, you know? See, it doesn't switch when you expect it. That's because the groove of the drums is in dotted notes, and so in bars, in loops of 3 bars or a bar and a half and 6 bar. I hope it's pretty clear. Uh, these are typically the kind of things that I do by myself without thinking about it. But now to try and talk about it and explain, I get to really, um, I had to like ask ChatGPT to be able to talk about it, because I was like, the first thing that I tried, the first recording when I tried to explain, I was not making any sense. So I hope it's a bit clearer now. And so, yeah, I've added a layer on this combo here. For example, this percussion sound. In the beginning, it's pretty much only my kick drum, and then I'm layering this more cinematic sample on top of it and playing with automation, you know. That's why here it sounds more like that, you know. I did the same with the kick drum. The main kick drum, let's say. There's pretty much only my kick as it is. And then I'm layering more and more of that other stretched cinematic percussion in order to not only ramp up the speed, but also the intensity and the sound and the loudness of the whole thing. Here we have this kind of rolling bass line sound that I mainly use in techno, but that I again stretched to be in the dotted mode as well. And so it loops in 3 bars here. And here it's the same, but it's faster. So it's looping only in a bar and a half. Same process. I duplicated the fast loop into the previous part and double the length of everything. That's pretty much how I get the intensity going on with the drums, and same for the hats. It's the same pattern, just again twice as fast. It's following the other percussion. It's really to add layer of sound, and that's pretty much how I get this whole thing. This intensity rising and rising, and this kind of weird feeling with the drums and forcing you into the next part every 16 bars, even though the drums themselves are not looped in that way. When you go into the next part, it's not a downbeat of the groove of the drums, you know? So that makes it for a weird kind of feeling. And that's pretty much what I got from the inspiration I got. It's not directly what it's done in the Odyssey score at all. but still, it's what I came up with after being inspired by that, you know? And so, yeah, you really got all these instruments and these sound effects that are following the grid and the 16 bar parts, you know, but the drums, they're not and they're forced. And but the layering and when I'm switching, adding sounds or adding layers, it is on the main grid. So you get this really disturbing feeling. I hope that makes sense. And to go again, as I said before, in this 3 against 4 kind of idea, you know, even though my parts are 16 bars, I only did 3 parts, 3 16 bars uh, parts in the first big part of the track, and then again 3 there. Yeah, this like kind of asymmetrical odd meter thing going on in the whole vibe of the project, so that makes it kind of weird again, let's say. Anyway, I hope you liked it or got inspired by anything, whether they're the sounds and the synth or the drums and this odd meter thing. So yeah, I hope you like it. That's it for me today, and I'm really happy with what happened there in that project. It feels good, you know, to experiment with different things and like open up my brain to more than just four to the floor techno. And I hope I'll be able to bring some of these concepts of like different parts in the track and maybe bring some of that into my next techno productions. But until then, take care and see you next time.